After one federal judge blocks President Trump from sending the Oregon National Guard to Portland, Trump instead sends the California National Guard. The Sunday shows drudge up retired generals to complain about the Secretary of War's higher standards in the military, and text messages from a Democratic candidate for Attorney General calling for the murder of a Virginia politician and his wife and children may drag down the Virginia Democrat ticket. I'm Tony Kinnett, host of the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Monday, October 6th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. On Saturday, October 4th, federal judge Karen Immergut blocked President Trump's call-up of 200 National Guardsmen to Portland, Oregon, saying that this is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law, and that Trump's deployment of the National Guard to Portland ignored facts on the ground, which is not a standard, by the way, for deploying the National Guard to protect federal buildings. That said, Governor Gavin Newsom's office then reported that President Trump intended to send 300 California National Guardsmen, who, of course, the courts had ruled could be federalized under the Trump administration to guard federal buildings. Trump is deploying 300 of those troops to Portland instead. While federal judge Karen Immergut was appointed by the first Trump administration, confirmed by a unanimous voice vote in 2019, she was a registered Democrat when she left Portland, Oregon, to work for Ken Starr, after which she became a Republican, many have suggested, in order to become a U.S. attorney under then President George W. Bush. Gavin Newsom has since suggested that he was going to take the fight back to court over control of the California National Guard because President Trump is deploying 300 of those California National Guardsmen to Portland, saying, quote, "After a federal court blocked his attempt to federalize the Oregon National Guard, Donald Trump is deploying 300 California National Guard personnel into Oregon. They are on their way there now. We are taking this fight back to court. The public cannot stay silent in the face of such reckless and authoritarian conduct by the President of the United States. Federalizing the National Guard is, in fact, within the ability of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces, since the National Guard was fully federalized under a more permanent status in the 30s. Here was President Trump responding to the Oregon judge blocking him from sending in the Oregon National Guard yesterday.
The order in Portland.
We're going to look at that. It was amazing. Portland is burning to the ground. It's insurrectionists all over the place. It's Antifa. And yet the politicians who are petrified. Look, the politicians are afraid for their lives. That's the only reason that they say, like, there's nothing happening. And you've seen it. The place is burning down and they pretend like there's nothing happening. So we'll take a look at the order. We haven't seen the order yet.
Retired General Pete Chiarelli went on ABC's This Week to say that he really didn't like President Trump deploying National Guardsmen to U.S. cities because he claimed they weren't trained to do things like this.
Well, I get very, very concerned because our forces don't train on a regular basis for that kind of duty and that kind of security. I also worry because the rules of engagement for police are much different than the rules of engagement that we apply in combat. They have a higher standard, proportionality standard, when applying those rules of engagement. And quite frankly, our forces are not trained in applying those.
As a matter of military history, the National Guard, the various states and commonwealths around the country, have in fact deployed National Guardsmen to U.S. areas of operation dozens, if not hundreds of times in the last 50 years, both in cleanup and security following natural disasters, as well as making sure that certain areas under insurrection and unrest, all the way from Waco, Texas, to reintegration via racial matters in the civil rights movement, were taken care of. It is something that National Guardsmen specifically train for, as opposed to the active duty U.S. Army and Marines. Retired General Chiarelli also wasn't a fan of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's comments about a higher standard for physical training, especially in combat positions.
Because war does not care if you're a man or a woman. Neither does the enemy. Nor does the weight of your rucksack, the size of an artillery round, or the body weight of a casualty on the battlefield who must be carried. This, and I want to be very clear about this, this is not about preventing women from serving. we very much value the impact of female troops. Our female officers and NCOs are the absolute best in the world. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. It will also mean that weak men won't qualify because we're not playing games. This is combat. This is life or death.
On ABC's This Week, here's what he said.
Do you think people will resign? Is there a red line? Is there anything unlawful about what he said?
No, there's nothing unlawful about what he said, nothing whatsoever. I'm concerned about what I consider an attack on women, and the fact that there are people who say that women have been let into different combat fields and cannot meet the standards. I just don't believe that's true. I know when the Army opened up the Ranger program, the standards did not change at all, not at all. And the fact of the matter is, on today's battlefield, everybody's in combat. Everybody's in combat. We found that out in Iraq. The minute you set foot from Kuwait into Iraq, you went into harm's way. And we needed medics. And many of our women were assigned to medical units. So we had to pull them out and send them up with convoys. And they did amazing.
On CBS Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, they didn't get retired General Chiarelli. Instead, they got retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges to say that standards for men in physical fitness when it comes to the military is, quote, medieval.
I think this is completely unnecessary. I have 38 years in the Army, and we've served with women in all sorts of different environments and deployments, and I never had a case where a female soldier was not able to do what she had to do. So this seems to me an unnecessary, almost a medieval approach that doesn't reflect the requirements that we have for women and men who are intelligent, able to operate in a modern battlefield environment.
And finally, Virginia Democrat Jay Jones, currently running for the position of Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Virginia, is under considerable fire for a series of text messages in which he seemed to suggest the open murder of his political opponent, saying that if he was in a room with former Republican House Speaker Todd Gilbert of Virginia, then if he only had 2 bullets in a room with Hitler, Pol Pot, and Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. He also suggested he hoped that Gilbert's children and wife Jennifer would die, suggesting, and I quote, "I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they're breeding little fascists? Yes. I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy." There's credible evidence this could sink a lot more than Jones' campaign for Attorney General. For example, gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger made a rather milquetoast statement suggesting that Jay needs to take full responsibility for his words, and that's about it. She didn't say anything about calling for him to step away from the race, anything along a line of calling out the comments specifically, just a kind of general tut-tutting. And that's not the worst of it. Democrat organizations inside Virginia, like the Virginia Blue Democrats, announced a reaffirmation in full support for Jay Jones for Attorney General regarding his comments saying, quote, "We say let those without sin cast the first stone," end quote. As a reminder, Democrat candidate Terry McAuliffe made some rather unwise statements a couple of weeks out from the Virginia gubernatorial election in 2021, giving Glenn Youngkin enough momentum to win the Virginia gubernatorial election. May receive a similar boost. We'll have to look at some of the polls. It's still a little too early to tell. Before you go, head down to the description and make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast. And join us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we dig into the latest news and nonsense, shutdown or no shutdown. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. Take care.